Welcome to Decoded, the podcast that decodes the design, technology, and experiences shaping our world and planet. I am Melisa Leñero.
And I'm Saeema and Melisa. Together we explore the systems, behaviors, and technologies influencing how we live, work, and connect, from human interactions to the ecosystems we are part of.
Each episode is a conversation with technologists, designers, entrepreneurs, and everyday users. Join us.
Hi, welcome back to the show. I'm Saeema.
And I'm Melisa.
And I'm Saeema Ahmed Christensen, a professor of design engineering and innovation, and also director of DigitLab, exploring design and digital technologies based in the University of Exeter.
And I'm a designer by training and currently rediscovering what design is in times where the world is challenged in many different ways, from the artificial intelligence revolution to deep societal changes and massive ecosystem destruction. And in today's episode, we are delighted to be exploring invention and entrepreneurship. We are excited to have Dr. Sam Bailey.
Yeah, and Sam read engineering, economics, and management at Oxford University before completing his PhD in computer science in UCL. He's since then worked in engineering and also finance before he began his own company, Skyrad, which brings inventions to market. And this is combined with his mission to make lives better. So we're quite excited to have him on. And he's brought in numbers of solutions that help with the safety and sustainability in the home. And they've primarily been developed through his company and include a renewable energy heating system with low carbon footprint, LeakBot, a technology that detects leaks around the home, Pippa, which is an AI-powered hob and stove safety monitor. And his vision is to see this device installed in millions of homes worldwide. So wow, Sam, that's quite a bio. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Saeema. Nice to speak to you.
Brilliant. We talk about in product development as being a professor of design. So we often talk about product development starting from two different ways. One is market driven. So there's some clear need and you start there and you think of an idea and take it all the way through. And the other is a technology push. So when there's a new material, a new particular technology that's invented, thinking through what application there is. But when looking at invention and innovating, I sometimes think this is between both, because you're both developing a technology and then you have trying to home the market. Perhaps you can talk through where your ideas come from. Where did it start? And maybe we could start with the example of Pippa.
Pippa came from Pippa. Just as a bit of background, it's a little box that you can stick on the. I've got one here. You can stick it on the wall above your cooker, and it watches what you're cooking, and it can preempt a fire. So the largest cause of fires in the home is cooking, and it's people leaving things unattended, especially the elderly if they've got any kind of sort of dementia or any issues like that. Then that pan is left on, it catches fire, it burns your kitchen down, and a regular smoke alarm doesn't go off until the kitchen's basically already on fire. And what Pippa does is it recognizes the signs of that fire before the fire starts, and it just speaks a warning, so you can just turn the cooker off before it's alarmed. So if you leave something on and it's starting to get too hot, or you let something boil dry, or you don't turn the stove off, Pippa just recognizes and it just speaks to you. The origin of the thinking, we're working on a few different things. We came up, LeakBot, our previous product, was another preventative device. So LeakBot is a little device that you clip it on the water pipe where the water enters your house, and it kind of waits till the middle of the night. You've gone to bed, the dishwasher's finished, the washing machine's finished, all the taps should be off, and it can detect any small movement in that pipe of water. And if there's water moving, that water's going somewhere. Unless you've left a tap dripping or something, that water's potentially seeping out, under the ceiling or in the wall somewhere and doing damage to your home, which you won't find out for several months when your ceiling falls down, and you then go to your insurance company and put in a very expensive claim to the insurance company. So LeakBot solves a problem for insurance companies, and they, in the UK, US, Scandinavia, there's insurance companies that basically give those away for free because they want to know that the leak has started before you make an insurance claim. And they can then send a plumber around, he just fixes it. It costs whether it's 50, £100, instead of waiting until the ceiling falls down and then it costs £10,000. So we kind of got this background in preventative intelligent technologies. And Pippa was kind of driven by the same realization that if I look at the other risks that people at home are exposed to, and their insurance companies, one of the next big ones is fire. And I quite enjoy cooking. It's always kind of bothered me that I had no understanding of how hot that pan is. I just turn the gas up and down. And it's a weirdly kind of, in this day and age, it's a weirdly crude way to control how you cook something, is you're kind of guessing whether it's the right temperature or not. So what we did, we started some experimentation. We got thermal imaging cameras, and we started pointing them at the cooker, watching what we could see in the cooker. And we put them on various different people's houses. We actually started before it was commercially viable. So until about 10 years ago, a thermal imaging camera or the sensor itself was a several $100 piece of hardware. And we actually started with those on the sort of expectation or hope that those will come down in price, and they have, and that's made Pippa viable. By looking at that data, we put devices out there that just logged. Didn't have any intelligence, it's just logging data back to a cloud server. And we watched kind of patterns in normal cooking. And then we intentionally, did some dangerous things. So I sat there with actually did in the garden over rather than my cooker, but pointed at a camping stove and set fire to things on the stove, and recorded those imagings to see whether, okay, is this fire predictable? And if so, can we encode that in? And the kind of the process was, we sort of identified that need from the statistics, from the data that's available. The Fire and Rescue Service publish data about every single fire they go out to. They investigate, identify the cause of every fire they go to. So it's all quite nicely recorded. We can see, what percentage of the fires were caused by cooking, what percentage of them did the alarm go off, what percentage of them were the occupants over 65, because of that data set. And in it, we've identified one, there's a sort of a need based on that data, and there is a solution that we're confident works, because we've put it in enough people's houses as a test device. We've set enough fires underneath it. We think, okay, right, we've now got a solution that fits that problem, and it doesn't quite fit, as you say, it doesn't quite fit into what you describe. Either it's some new technology that you bring to market, or market driven, because the market for it doesn't really exist. It's not like there's some market demand for this thing, which on the one hand is great because it gives us a kind of first mover advantage. The IP field is nice and clear. We can get in there first. But on the other hand, because that market sort of doesn't exist already, you have to create that market, and that's actually quite a hard thing to do.
But how you do it? Like, you've done it. So how would you do it? How would you create that market when it's, as Saeema said, like push and pull with the market, and you have a technology, an idea, you've tested it, and then you mentioned that you've put it in houses. How many houses test this before you launch it?
So before we started making it, we put in about 20, 25 people's houses. So we put an early version in, friends and families and members of the team. We all did it.
Once you have, for example, that data from the testing that you did, plus all the testing that you've done on the stoves, which sounds fascinating and quite interesting and quite fun to be very protected, but like setting up a fire to see how it reacts. But at the same time, how do you find that market? Like, that it's going to work, that you have to test it. How then you start setting this particular technology into people's houses?
Yeah, so it's hard, actually, and I don't think we quite know all the answers to this. So there's different routes. So we could either go a sort of direct-to-consumer route. If you're going to go direct-to-consumer, you've got to educate people. So you've got to say, okay, right, it's not a market that already exists. Do you know that the largest cause of fires in the home is cooking? Okay, right, that's one thing I've got to educate you on. Right, do you know there's a solution to it? Do you know this is particularly applicable, especially if you've got aging parents or grandparents or something that might become a hazard to themselves? Do you know that this could stop them having to go into a care home, and that'll save you an extraordinary amount of money? You kind of you've got to tell people about all those things. And that's quite a hard thing to do. So we did some experimentation. We kind of did various different Facebook ads trying to work out how do we do that. And it's surprisingly difficult because I've got to get several points across. I haven't got a lot of people's attention. I've got to identify who let's say I'm aiming at people whose parents might be starting to get dementia or something. So kind of the tightest I can go on that is they're probably in their 40s and 50s. So that's a lot of people I've got to kind of present that advert to then try and identify the ones that might benefit from it. And probably the people that it actually presses the button for is the people who've already experienced it. So, if someone's already had that stove fire or know that they've caught their aging parent leaving the cooker on and thinking, but for the grace of God, they'd have burnt the house down with themselves in it. That's a lot easier. But trying to identify, and it's tricky. It's a preventative product is kind of a harder thing to promote, and people don't go out and buy smoke alarms. It required a lot of regulation to force people to put smoke alarms in before they put smoke alarms in. So it's kind of what's going to make it work is, at least the consumer sense, is going to have to be some combination of that. What we'd love to do is have on the side of a fire engine where it says get a stove monitor. I think that's quite an important thing to do. But then there's direct to business channels that are a lot more easy to address because the people already understand the risk. So people who are operating retirement properties, they will have this problem where one of their residents will leave the cooker on and they'll set fire to probably not the whole building, but there'll be smoke damage throughout. There'll be the fire engine will turn up, hosing everything down. They've got to move all the residents out. They've got to find temporary accommodation while the building's repaired. And these are, it's not just the direct immediate cost of the damage to the building. There's all this disruption. If I'm operate the care home in a town and I've suddenly got 50 elderly residents I need to rehouse, there's nowhere in that town that I can put them. So what do? I put them somewhere else and they're away from their families. So there's quite a lot of costs that people in the industry understand. So then that's you haven't got to overcome that that education barrier. And the same will be true for councils and student accommodation operators who will. They'll have all experienced this problem, and that's a lot easier to address.
That's really fascinating. You've said quite a few things there. So you've talked a little bit about looking at technology trends, and you sort of invested in those thermal imaging and sort of gambled on those prices coming down for that to be viable. But you also looked at the market trends. So you looked at the data and the needs. And then you've said something else that's interesting. You've talked about two markets that are very extreme. So one are the elderly and perhaps those with dementia or need a little bit more support in independent living. And then students who are just transitioning. They're so different from each other. If we just go back to those technology trends and looking at the market need, and you said you looked at the numbers and you saw the market risk, but where did the idea come from? What drove you to go and look and start doing that research? You have this sort of idea of these inventors sitting in the basement, and I know you're sitting up in the attic. So is that the reality? Are you sitting there pondering, I need to go and look at this data? What drove you to go look and identify this technology and these data in the first place?
I guess kind of that's why I invent stuff. I sort of look at, and it's possibly not necessarily the best way of doing it, but it's sort of the way I do it is I'm trying to identify where's that requirement from from a high level data. So we'll discuss some of the things I've done, but the the solar heating system you talked about, that was driven by looking at the data. The Yoga electric buggies, that was driven by looking at the data. So that's kind of how I approach it. I'm part engineer, I'm part statistician. I'm going, okay,
so
right.
You regularly look at data. So where do you go? So are you just
Google.com
or
whatever.
I'm a statistician. That's really good. I'm reading academic publications. I'm looking at publicly available statistics. Some of the stuff for the Pippa, it was based on when we're doing Leapbot, we're in a lot of conversation with insurance companies where they're sharing their claims data with us. So, where they're going, okay, this is how much we spend on damage from leaks. They're also going, this is how much we spend on damage from fire. And I'm going, Okay, that's helpful to know. We can address that, and a lot of it's made publicly available. The ABI, Association of British Insurers, publish fact sheets. Insurance companies submit their data to the ABI in a sort of aggregate level, and they'll document industry trends. Office of National Statistics, they maintain all the Home Office, maintain all the fast. So there's a lot of really good data sets out there. So if you're looking at something like this, you can get the data first. It's not if it's a consumer product, to be a lot harder thing to do. I can't guess how many people are going to buy my whatever it's face cream or something. I have to guess. But on these things, you can really identify what that value is up front from the available data.
And talking about data, maybe we can talk about Yogo. What was the data that you were looking into to develop Yogo? And also, you talk about the process and the development that you went through Pippa, right? Like the monitor that you just showed. But what was now the product development for something like Yogo? And for people that don't know what Yogo is, you've seen them around Hammersmith. They're like tiny carts or carts that are around. And you can talk more about them, Sam. But I think the question is about what was the data that drove you to create Yogo? And then when you are developing products and you explain it very well with the testing and then putting some of the samples in houses, so then you do a controlled testing as well, you also need funding. So in order to create, for example, Pippa, then that's a small device. But for Yogo, that it's a vehicle, how do you do it? So it's about data, the funding that drove you to create Yogo. And can you please describe a little bit Yogo?
Yeah, absolutely. So Yogo, if you haven't seen one, is it's a very small electric vehicle. So it's basically sort of big golf buggy. So it's a 4-wheel vehicle. It's fully electric powered. It's got 2 seats. It's solar recharging, at least in the summer in the UK, not in the winter. It's got a top speed of 20 miles an hour, range of about 50 kilometers, and you can rent it like the line bikes or the electric scooters. So I download an app. I need a driving license. I scan a QR code, it unlocks, and off I go, and I rent it by the minute. And you use it for urban journeys within London. So and what we're trying to do is if we can transition car journeys, from a full-size car into a Yogo, then it's about a 15 times reduction in the amount of CO2 required to make the vehicle in the first place, especially because of the battery. And it's a roughly 3-fold reduction in the CO2 emissions compared to a full-size electric car. And pick your car that you compare it to, 15 times better than a regular diesel, and God knows, 100 times better than an SUV, depending on your choice of SUV. So it's partly about carbon reduction, but it's also about a lot of other things, and kind of how that vehicle affects the environment that people are using. But then in terms of kind of how do we come to that from data? It's obvious.
What was the Statista website that you saw? What was the data that Statista was giving you that you created Yogo?
So it was more looking at the carbon emissions from battery manufacture. So if I look at electric vehicles, if I was to go out and buy a full-size electric car, I live in London. I don't drive that many miles. I probably do 4,000 miles a year. I will never recoup the embodied CO2 required to make the battery to go in that car. So currently we've got government policy which subsidises that, and it increases people's carbon footprints. And that's a really, really bad position to be in. But that's currently what it is. And the currently society is just going, how do we make and sell electric cars? But that hidden embodied CO2, and we've read about this is quite serious. So if I'm a high mileage driver, I'm living out in the suburbs somewhere, buy that car, I will do enough miles that I'll recoup the
You'll be offsetting that. But if you live in London, as you said, that it's 4 miles, then you won't, because as you said, the battery
I'll never recoup it.
Oh, I haven't seen it like that way. Okay.
Yeah. So people are sat there. They've got a massive subsidy from the government, £20,000-30,000 from the taxpayer to buy, whatever is for £50,000, what should be an £80,000 cost. Large electric car, and its carbon footprint is higher than if they'd just gone out and just bought petrol.
So
it's
starting from your data and your idea to reduce emissions and really making it fit for purposes for London, how do you go from that idea? How do you go from, like, where did you go next? How do you develop it? How do you go through that product development process?
How to go for product development? We went through a sort of a step first where we built models of how this vehicle would behave. What would be that trade-off with the size of the battery? So it's a 5 kilowatt hour in that battery in the Yogo vehicle. So that's most EVs will have possibly a 70, that kind of thing. So we look roughly 14 times less. We modelled how it would potentially interact with traffic, and we kind of looked at, okay, right, if we there's other things. So if you make the vehicle smaller, traffic behaves differently. So when I like literally the only thing that determines your speed driving through London is when the light goes green, how many vehicles get through each green light. So if there's 20 people in front of you and every green light 5 vehicles go through, you're going to be there for 4 minutes because it's going to require 4 cycles. If 10 vehicles go through, you're going to only be there for 2 minutes because it only requires 2 cycles. So it doesn't matter how fast you drive. All that matters is how many vehicles get through each green light. Now, if you make smaller vehicles, when the light goes green, more vehicles can get through. So you're not just kind of looking at the carbon, you're looking at, right, okay, if I shrink the vehicle, what other benefits do I have? So I have a reduction in congestion, I have a reduction in CO2, I have a big reduction in cost because they're, big part of the cost of a EV is the cost of that battery. So by shrinking that battery, I bring that down. So kind of based on those, that modeling and that data, that drove us to, we need to get a vehicle that's as small as possible. And that then, we turned it into a sort of a white paper, discussion paper, and got some interest from an investor who I know, and he said, okay, let's try it.
So you've come up with the idea, you've simulated the models, and you've really recognized there's a need for society, for the planet to think about the size, to think about these vehicles. Where do you start thinking about the people in there, and how do you? So that product you have, Yogo, has an app, so it's really a product service system. And so there's the whole bit around it, and these products you've got. We're all in the Hammersmith Fulham area, so we've seen them around, the big yellow golf buggies going round. They're quite big. Do you make them all yourselves, or do you then look and identify parts, and are they modified? And how do you understand how do you mirror with what you've got from the environmental perspective to what people need?
So trying to work out what people need is hard, I think. It might just be that you guys probably understand this environment better than me. It's one thing looking at the hard data. It's another thing looking at, well, how's a person going to react to that vehicle? Are they going to get in it? Are they going to feel safe? Are they going to go, oh, I'm not touching that because it looks weird? And it's very, very hard to judge that. So in terms of kind of the steps we went through, we knew we wanted to try and get a test. We had to put some real vehicles on the road to see how people would react. It's no good trying to, we could focus group it or something. If we offered you a small vehicle, would you try it? I don't think that'd have been very, very meaningful. So the only way to do it was to actually get real vehicles on the road, let people see it, let people try it, let people drive alongside a bus. Do they feel comfortable in it? Let the neighbours see it, let people cycle alongside it. You kind of need to do it for real. So creating new vehicles are an insanely expensive thing to do. So kind of the next step was looking through, okay, right, what are the regulations? Because we've got to get this thing road legal. We've got to get number plates on, we've got to get insured, we've got to get it through all the various homologation, certification tests. So we went around and we found manufacturers of vehicles that were kind of close. So rather than starting from scratch and going, okay, we're gonna make a vehicle ourselves, we went around. We found a company there in China, because that's where 90% of everything is made. And they did sort of vehicles for airports and hotels. So the kind of things you'd see, carrying the baggage around on the airport apron, or, taking people around holiday resorts. And we went over, spent a while in a meeting room in Guangzhou, sketching things out on whiteboards, looking at what they already had, trying different combinations of, how could this be made from an existing vehicle they already do and modified to meet our requirements with the kind of, lowest amount of R&D costs, lowest amount of, getting new moldings made. And because it wasn't that far from something they already had, that wasn't that massively expensive a process. So what that meant is we had a vehicle we could get certified and homologated. It's got to go through all the, the brake tests and the seatbelt tests and all that kind of stuff to get legal on the UK road. And then we could bring it in, we could try it for real. So, that's how we did it. And we did it for, it was 3 people, a couple of years, not a massive amount of money to do that. And that then gave us a test vehicle that we can use to test the market, test people's reactions.
And what were their reactions? Like what people say to you at the beginning? That must be like super interesting. Like seeing a golf cart in the middle of the street, being like, "Hey, the court is not here," but they're different. They don't look like that. So what were their first impressions?
Massively positive. I mean, people, it's like being a film star. I get videoed every time I went past a traffic light. I get people coming up to me in the street, go, "Oh, it's amazing! I love it." So, I mean, we've had a few negative ones, but comfortably 95% of it is overwhelmingly positive. I think people get it. They understand that it's beneficial for their city, that people drive these things. But people who use it, it's a very nice thing to drive. So it's really small. It's got really good visibility. So it's a lot easier to maneuvering a big vehicle down in the street is hard. You kind of can't see where the corners are. You're trying to get past each other. This thing, you just whistle straight through. It's like Mario Kart. And the fact that you can't speed on it is like I'm putting my foot flat to the floor and it goes, and then it gets to 20 and it just stops. It's speed limited. So it's kind of pleasant to drive.
It's safe.
Yeah, it's safe. It's got a roll cage. It's got a seatbelt. You don't want to do. You're not allowed to go on a motorway. You wouldn't be in a high speed crash in it, but 20 miles an hour, you've got enough protection that you're going to be fine. You're moving slowly. Everyone else is moving slowly. You don't need the same level of crash protection that you do in a full size car. So the reaction's been super positive. There's quite a bit of we featured in all sorts of interesting press articles. There's some German science show came and made a show about us. So it was the Simon will remember this, Tomorrow's World. I remember age days telling my dad I wanted to be on Tomorrow's World. And they don't make Tomorrow's World anymore, but in Germany they make a program called Galileo, which is equivalent to Tomorrow's World, and they featured it on that. So I think I've ticked that life ambition to be on sat and get to Tomorrow's World.
Cross from the bucket list.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You also see, I mean, I've seen it on social media, and I've also seen people sitting in there taking photos, posing with their dog or, or with their baby. And just, so it's also the funness of the ride. So it's not just the society bit, but have you got sort of feedback from people and your initial testing that changed what you did or helped you design that product service system?
The main thing, actually, so the main problem we have actually is vandalism. So we kind of thought this might be a problem. I mean, it's Hammersmith and Fulham. It's not a particularly rough area of the country. We thought, okay, we'll expect a little bit, but we might get away with it. But the vehicle wasn't particularly hardened. It was we get the plastic indicator stalk smashed off and things like that. And so that was kind of the main learning we got, actually, was from not from the people who are using it, but realizing actually it's the same as the Line Bike guys encountered, where the first version of Line Bike was this little flimsy thing that people smashed up, and it's now basically built like a tank. We don't want to have to follow that route, but definitely it needs making robust. It needs making so that someone can't try and pull you can't nick it. It's got an immobilizer in it, but people don't realise that. So you get people in there trying cables out.
Yeah, sorry. If someone nicks it, then it would be like 20 hours a mile. Like, okay, then you can run. Just take it back.
So you're getting away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, how far are you going to
Hey,
go?
that's mine.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So I put it on eBay. You're like, well,
I think I know this.
Yeah, I suspect what it is. It's a fun thing. The attraction to joyride it is going to be quite high. I suspect what it'll be kids with either you've got to be 25 for insurance purposes to drive, which is actually quite irritatingly tough. It's not our imposition, but yeah, my guess is it's kids would like to try it, but they
Right.
can't.
And then you talk about so many ideas, and probably, you talk about 2 ideas, but I'm sure that you have plenty more in your notebook, in your head, and I want to see what is coming next. But what has been the reaction of society to your ideas of like bringing something that is new that people haven't seen it, or just being very disruptive of changing some product into a new context? What is the acceptance of society? You mentioned also that there were some negative comments around it. So yeah, what can you tell us about the reaction of society?
I mean, the negative comments were, I don't know, people always kind of be reactionary to something new. So some people didn't like the cosmetics of it. We had you can actually park it end on, so you're about a quarter of a parking space, and it's kind of the way it sits. If you're parked next to it, it's slightly harder to get your car out if you're in the next slot. So we had kind of motorists going, "Oh, you're wasting all this parking space. Yeah, we can't get our cars in to park." And it's like, well, no, we okay, so we're not there yet, but we can get 4 of these in a regular parking space compared to the size of your car. And actually, if people are sharing these things, we think somewhere between, one vehicle could cover 10 to 20 households' needs. Now, ideally, what you want put one between 10 households, you put 2 between 20 households, and then there's that redundancy built in so that, whatever it is, if someone's already using it, there's another one available. But in terms of reducing that demand for parking, the benefit's massive. But kind of people don't make that leap. They just kind of react to what their immediate impression is. Oh, it's another vehicle on the road. It's using my parking space. So yeah, that was kind of the main main negative reaction we got. But yeah, otherwise it's astonishingly positive. Yeah.
But you've also talked a little bit about in the beginning with Pippa that when there's so Pippa was the device to detect cooking fires before they happen, that if there's no market, you have to create a market. So that sort of links into the innovation. So you have to demonstrate the value to people. How do you do that? I mean, you said you're sort of doing it through Facebook, but how do you recognize where the value is?
That's
what I'm saying. How do you know who's going to be the user of what you invent?
Yeah, I mean, you can put a number on the value for Pippa fairly easily because it's we know what the risk of a fire is, we know what the cost is, we know what the danger is, we know what the cost of the care home is, and we've done that kind of mathematical modelling. You go, okay, if you look at the data, everyone should have a Pippa. Like, it's hands down. Just in terms of the likelihood of you damaging your home or injuring yourself and your family, it should be in there. For the cost of the Pippa, it pays for itself. 10, 20 times over. That kind of assumes a sort of perfect information and rationality from the consumer that they'll do that. And how you bridge that gap, I don't think is obvious, actually. I think in a lot of cases, especially like Pippa, unless you're going to someone who already kind of understands that risk, like the care home operator or the council or the housing association, who already understand that, I think it's going to be quite hard. So I think actually, the Dragon's Den made big difference, but I think actually it's going to have to be a little bit of push from, for example, the fire brigades, a little bit of kind of, the government can't advertise our product, but a sort of public information kind of, you realise that cooking's a very high danger, and that's I think that's what it'll take. So I think kind of what we need is we'll start with the markets where people already get it, and then try and build up some momentum and awareness based on that, and then get it into other people's homes.
Yeah, that's interesting because you've talked about these numbers and how you can demonstrate the value in terms of cost, but also in terms of safety and security. For individuals, we discussed in our last episode, we talked a little bit about tax systems, and they're often designed by thinking about numbers and data. But what really makes a difference is understanding that person in the loop. So it's having the people in there. And is there an opportunity to sort of think through, or do you get any in part of your testing and just talking with people, the stories from the individual? So what would make one person buy it? Are they going to be convinced by the data? Or is that really about life, understanding the impact on their lives?
I think probably for Pippa, it's they've had that experience. So they've had them or their family member, partner, parent or something has had that that cooking fire fear, and they see this and go, oh, yeah, that's what I need. And that kind of tends to be the conversations we have with people. And we followed up the first couple of hundred Pippas we sent out. We literally phoned everyone up and go, okay, right. How are you finding it? And we had a one-to-one conversation with them all. And the stories were, my husband left the stove on. It felt like a matter of time before he was going to burn the house down. This is fantastic. I get the warning through to my phone, go around and turn the stove off. And that's then kept that person out of a care home that they would have otherwise been in. So that tends to be, they sort of follow that pattern.
Yeah, so you really have picked up the user insights as well as just looking at the numbers. You've really got those stories. That's really interesting. Yeah. So we're on Dragon's Den, you've just mentioned, and for context, you were recently on Dragon's Den with Pippa, describing and pitching this to investors. And if I remember correctly, I did come and watch that experience, and it was really wonderful to see you on there. You managed to convince many of the investors, the dragons, to invest in that. Could you? I can't recall how many there were. Was it 3 or 4 that you had fighting over you?
Yes, we got 3. 3 competing.
3, Wow.
And eventually what I did was I got them to basically all invest, motivated actually by not necessarily the financials, but by the other input that they can provide. So, part of the selling point of working with the dragons is it's not just the money, it's their expertise, it's the team they've got behind them, it's their contacts and their marketing ability that excuse me, that comes with it. So, the story is we go in, they start competing, and I sort of try and calm everything down and say, okay, right, can we come to
calm down, dragons,
and bring bring everyone. Let's bring everyone in.
You were brilliant bringing them in. And what would be convincing the dragons are obviously on show and it's on television. It's high pressure environment. As an investor, so one path for designers is to come up with their own invention, or as engineers, or the mix that you like yourself. And then you've got that journey, which is not just a design journey or a product development or a service design journey. It's also about bringing the investment and thinking about the financials around it. So from your experience on Dragon's Den, what is it that it takes to invest, for an investor to invest? What is it that convinced them? What would be your sort of messaging or learning from there? And that would be valuable to other people.
Yeah, I don't know how representative Dragon's Den is. So it's an hour of discussion that turns into 12 minutes of telly. I think in if you're going to a VC firm, that it would be a lot more about the in-depth financials and the business plan and the cost of products. We discussed that on Dragon's Den, but there's depths that you don't see in the TV show. But it's not as deep as it would be if you're going towards to a VC firm. Obviously you've got to make that business case. You have to have a business model that shows, I can sell it for more than it costs to make. Otherwise, no one's going to be particularly interested in it. There's it's going to be the more risks you can tick off, the better. So, if I kind of think from the start, right, have I got an idea? Do people like it? Can I manufacture it? Do I know what the cost is? Do I know how I'm going to get it to market? And that there's a sort of a series of steps. And the more steps you can get through before you say, okay, I want to take it, external investment, the better. If you just turn up with I've got this idea that like, whatever, and it does require you to put your time and your money into getting that as far down the road as you can. If you've actually got something that's already gone to market and you've got real customers, that then proves to the potential investor that this product has it's got legs. I think the further lower you are down that, I think the harder it is to do. It's hard. I mean, the UK is not a great environment for getting that risk-based investment. I think it's fair to say. If you look at kind of what happens in the US and the amount of money that people can raise, it's massively higher. The UK is we are not as good at that kind of early stage, innovative, risky investment.
What would UK need to change them?
I wonder. I mean, it's me thinking. You're always competing against property in the UK. Someone's got some cash. They go, oh, shall I invest it in this risky thing, or shall I just buy it? Some houses and rent them out. The amount of money they can get out of doing that is quite high, and it's almost guaranteed. The government basically underwrites the value of your property. They go, if the house price starts to drop, then they'll do something. So it's almost like you're always competing against this elephant in the room, which is, if I look at people I know who've got cash sticking around, they're buying rental flats. They're not going, oh, let's stick it in a portfolio of SEIS investments.
Right.
So I think that is actually a genuine problem. There will be is also slightly self-perpetuating. I think the sort of person who will tend to invest in something like this is somebody who's probably done it themselves before. So the dragons are all successful entrepreneurs in their own right, and they are now partly investing their cash in a portfolio of assets, but they're also they want to put something back in again. And actually, I think you find quite a lot of that. That's the motivation behind a lot of these kind of business angels who do that sort of thing. Is actually it's genuine altruism. They want to help people. They want to grow more businesses because they understand that it benefits society.
Yeah.
Changing gears a little bit, you mentioned at the beginning when we're asking you about the process that you follow to develop a product or a service, or in this case, both products, you mentioned that you go through the data and then you like the process that you just mentioned, but you also said, but I wouldn't do it. Probably I wouldn't do it like this again. So what would you change in your process? And I love that you're laughing because probably you're like, oh my God, I would change so many things. What would you change in the process?
Well, you change the process. I think I have a kind of a bit of a blind spot for the marketing, I'll be honest. I'm kind of the inventor, the engineer, the statistician, the data guy. I'm not the marketing guy. I think what it actually requires is more input on the marketing side, and that needs to go along with the data. So I'm looking at this, going, okay, right, based on these numbers, everyone should have a Pippa, but that only works if you back it up with the marketing and with the information campaigns and public information campaigns. And it's not just direct to consumer; it's also marketing it to the appropriate the council or whatever agency it is that might also help to promote this thing on your behalf. I think that's the bit that you also need to get right. You need to have that marketing in the mix as well.
Now, that's fascinating. So I think it's probably a good time for us to sort of wrap up the episode. And for me, I think what I've heard is that you've really an example of somebody who's a data-driven innovator. So who's looking and sitting there researching and identifying where there's potential gaps, whether it's on CO2 emissions reductions or whether it's on preventing fires or other areas that you've talked about. And then there's a journey there where you've also identifying potential trends in technology and the direction in terms of cost. So to make these things viable, and you're bringing those two together, as well as recognizing how this is going to have an impact with people. And I think that's a bit that you've just said, because the marketing bit, you're saying this, it's challenging, but you've also saying that these are areas where markets, they sometimes need to create new market and understand, for people to understand what is the value. And that's not easy to do. So we completely get that. I think that those are three really interesting trends. So bringing all those disciplines together is tech, but also understanding the business behind it and understanding the user. And your examples that you've had in there were really great examples where you're transitioning between those markets. And you've got completely different extremes, like the older generation and the students. So two completely user groups in there. So thank you very much for this episode, Sam. We really appreciate your joining us. And we're quite excited that our next episode is going to be with Professor Davina Fantini, who's a designer and also educated as a biologist. And she'll be talking, amongst other things, about regenerative design. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what you think, or if you have an idea for a future guest or topic, at www.decodedpodcast.com.
Don't forget to give us a rating wherever you listen, and follow us on TikTok and Instagram at decoded.podcast. See you!